another amazing Mold Talks. I have a very special guest, and I've been talking to Shannon a little bit off camera so far, so I can already tell this is going to be, an amazing Mold Talks, something that's really never been covered before. So I'm excited. Shannon, go ahead and introduce yourself. Tell everybody why you're here.
Hi, thanks so much for having me, Michael. I'm here mainly to share our personal journey for me and my family. Going through everything, it just made me realize like how few people know about mold illness and how it's impacting people and they don't even know it. And I think that's probably the most frustrating. You don't know the signs to look for. So you could be experiencing, like for us, we noticed a few things with one of my children in particular, and then just kept getting passed off as something else. Maybe he has asthma, maybe he's got ADHD, maybe there like a million different things, but nothing was hitting the core of the problem of what it was. And I just think there needs to be a lot more awareness. So that way people, if you don't know what's causing your issues, you're never going to fix it. And I just think that a lot of people need to be more aware of that.
Yeah, I mean, you did amazing at talking about all my talking points for this show already. So thank you for that. We take 20,000 breaths per day, right? And it's the last place we ever look. Consume more air than food, water. I've said that line 100 times, I think, but it's so powerful because it's such a true statement. We never look at air quality and optimizing our health or looking at it for potential causes of illness. Chronic inflammation leads to chronic disease. It all makes perfect sense when you look at it, but the problem is far too little people are actually looking at it. So thank you for being here today, becoming vulnerable. I know it's not easy. I know some of these questions are going to trigger some, unhappy moments. And, I apologize in advance for that. Obviously, this is not to make you upset or anything. It's really to share your story so that others that are going through similar challenges, it can help them. And to raise awareness around this, as you just so well put it, that it's an important thing that needs to be done. So without further ado, we're going to kind of dive into your story, and it's a unique one. And I thank you so much for being here. When was it that you noticed you weren't feeling well? And I understand that you isn't just you. There's some other family members involved. So,
Right.
Go ahead and kind of bring us through that. Let us know who didn't feel well first, and how did that kind of transition from person to person?
Okay. Well, first it was my son. He was, I guess, 6 at the time. And I remember the day like it was yesterday. It was July 14th, 2019. And we were sitting at the table drawing and coloring with him and my daughter, who's just under 2 years younger than he is. And I just noticed that he started having like neck and mouth twitches. And so I just kept obviously observing and watching, and like every few 30 seconds to 2 minutes, so he would just have another like twist of his neck, and his mouth would move in a way that was involuntary. And so after about 2 days, because I just was trying to just see, you know what I mean? I called a pediatrician, and I didn't want to bring awareness to my son about it because I didn't want to make him self-conscious or anything. I would just ask him like, is your neck sore, or are you okay? And he's like, yeah, like it was like, it didn't even occur to him. And so then after 2 days, I called the pediatrician, and so we went in, and then they asked me if his throat was okay. And I said, yeah, I mean, he's not been complaining about his throat. And they said, well, let's check for strep throat, because sometimes when you have strep throat and ticks at the same time, it could be a sign of PANS or PANDAS. And so this was the first time I'd ever heard of that acronym before, which is, I believe, the pediatric autoimmune neurology disorder associated with strep. And apparently it is common amongst boys. So they did the strep test and it came back positive. So he said, well, I don't really deal with this because I'm just a general pediatrician. So I'm going to refer you to a neurologist. So we went to the neurologist and they had blood work done. He literally asked us 0 questions, just said, he looked at his eyes and had him stand on 1 foot and ordered the blood work. So we did that. And about a week later, we went back and he said all of his blood work, of course, all the markers were perfectly fine. This is fairly common amongst boys. He might grow out of it. He might not. If it doesn't bother him, don't worry about it. If it does, here's some ADHD medicine. And I was like, no, that's not our problem. But thanks. And we're going to be on our way. So at this point, I had just finished my health coaching certification. And I was deeply interested in environmental toxins and was already looking up all the things and starting to remember, okay, I remember seeing some articles and documentaries that I had looked into. I wonder if maybe mold might be a problem. I don't know. Like, I don't know, but I just remember seeing this one documentary like a few months back and it just talking about some stuff. It just kind of rang a bell for me. And so I was like, I need to find a functional medicine doctor in town. I don't live in like a tremendously large town, but it's not like super small either. So I started asking around and talking to people that I knew. And also at the time, my son was also having some like shortness of breath. And so somebody had recommended, you know what, a chiropractor would be really, really good for that. And so we went to a chiropractor in regards to the shortness of breath and in regards to the tics. And he said that he couldn't help with the tics, but he did know a functional medicine doctor in town. So he referred me to her for that. And he resolved because we tested him for asthma. He didn't have asthma. So that was definitely related to the mold. But at that point, I didn't know that. So within about 2 months, he resolved his shortness of breath. And in the meantime, I went to the functional medicine doctor and I told her everything that we were going through. And she said, has your house had water damage? That was the first person that asked me that question. And
how long was that? How long was that for? You said it was July 14th, 2019.
And I met with her in October.
You may not remember the date. October. Okay. So quite a few months of that journey before someone finally started to ask you, hey, have you checked your house? Okay.
Yep. And that was it was mid-October that we went to her. And so she asked me the series of questions and I said, like, well, as a matter of fact, yes. And we did have a roof leak and like the vent in the bathroom wasn't vented properly. So anyway, we had the house tested. In the meantime, we did the mycotoxin urine test and they matched up perfectly. The mycotoxin urine test showed the exact molds that turned out to be present in the air test that we had done for the house. And that's how then once I started working with her, then I realized things that I had noticed that were going on with him 6 months prior to the tics were related to the mold, but I didn't know that at the time. So like I'd say like December-ish, prior to the first onset of tics, like his joints in his fingers and his wrists were really bothering him. Whenever he would do homework, he would kind of like stretch out his arms and his elbows and flex his like fingers a lot. He just all of a sudden couldn't like sit. I mean, I know like little kids can't sit still, but he was like excessive, could not sit still. Things like that, clearing the throat. He started clearing his throat a lot. I'm like, well, maybe he's lactose intolerant, but that wasn't any of it. It was all related to the mold.
Yeah, makes sense.
Yeah.
And this roof leak happened before all that, I would imagine, right?
That was, because that was in like December of 2018, right around Christmas time, because it was his first year in kindergarten. I just remember that's when he started clearing his throat at time, like over like Christmas break, like just nonstop. So that was the first sign. And then like maybe like February, March, he started, whenever he was doing his homework, his hands are always bothering him and everything. So those were just like the very early signs that where they were related, but we didn't know until something more drastic happened with the tics.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, that's a very interesting correlation. It all seems to line up. I've seen time and time again where the mycotoxin and the actual mold inside the home just kind of line up perfectly. And, it's a good indication that, hey, we need to do something about this mold here that clearly is creating an issue for us internally. So then there was also you and your daughter as well. So who then started to experience these symptoms? And and obviously
I
I'm
would say
imagining they're different
myself.
symptoms. Okay.
Yeah, for him, he also ended up with like a lot of gut issues, candida, which kind of goes hand in hand, the mold, the candida, and anxiety. So those would be all of his kind of wrapped up into a nutshell. For myself, losing like a lot of hair, but I would wake up with a headache literally every day. I've never had headaches prior to this, like, the occasional headache, whatever. But I mean, it was literally almost like clockwork, almost every day, waking up with a headache. And of course, like gut issues as well. But I would say that my memory was pretty bad. I mean, I would go to read a new recipe and not even like reading the whole thing, like just my next ingredient, and then forget, like, oh my God, what was that? Like, just the memory was really bad. And of course, just being tired a lot. And I chalked it up to, I'm busy with the kids, we're running around with different schedules. One's in preschool, one's in kindergarten or first grade or whatever. And then just chalking it up to just having mom brain and being tired because I've got 2 young kids, which I think is passed off a lot. Like, oh, I've got mom brain. Well, technically, no, it's probably not just mom brain. It's probably something else.
Yeah, it's easy for us to normalize things, right? Like, oh, there's always a good excuse for something. But most of the time we have to trust our intuition, trust our bodies, because our body's going to tell us. And when you have this much correlation happening, water events, these symptoms that pop up, you actually get it tested, the testing all correlates. You don't ignore that.
No.
You start to say, all right, let's put a plan together to fix this. So how long did you have all these symptoms at the same time your son was having symptoms, or they kind of spread out a bit?
So he started, I'd say he started in December of 2018, roughly. And then they kind of were progressing, or they would change, do you know what I mean? Or kind of accumulate and have more. I'm not really exactly sure when I started. I would say that after we did the test, the mycotoxin test for him, and the house test, is when I started realizing, wait a minute, my headaches are all the time. You know what I mean? It was like, kind of, sometimes you just don't really think about it. And then when you know what to look for, then you realize, wait a minute, I've been doing this for XYZ amount of time. It really wasn't a problem before. You know what I mean?
Right. Yeah. You're like, the first couple of times you take Advil, it's a coincidence. But then it's like, wait a second, I've been taking Advil like every day for weeks at a time.
Yeah.
That's not normal. So yeah, no, it's, I totally understand that. So you started to kind of connect the dots around that time. And then I believe there was unfortunately another person in your family was suffering, right? And so tell me about that.
Okay, so my daughter is a little bit different. Her initial, I guess, sign or symptom was what's referred to as mold rage. She's usually a very, just a regular kid, and every kid has gets upset from time to time, but she would, like, full on angry over seemingly nothing. 1 minute she's having fun, the next minute she's screaming at the top of her lungs and hitting you. And that was totally out of character for her previous 6 years of life. It wasn't like it was like this all the time. It was all of a sudden. And then that started about a year after my son started having visible issues. So it took a little while longer for it to affect her, or at least for us to be aware that it was affecting her.
Yeah. And mold rage is very, very real. I've experienced it dealing with clients, in the process of fixing their home, and you're kind of going through what needs to happen. And it's just like 0 to 100, they're screaming. And then after they are super apologetic, like, I really don't know what happened. So I've experienced this firsthand, and it's really severe and shocking, especially if you've never experienced that before. But also, in other Mold Talks podcasts, we've had, kind of the wives talking about the mold rage and their husbands that when they weren't aware of it. And it's like the stone cold look in their eye. Like it's like something almost like possessive, they get possessed essentially. They're not themselves. They have
Yeah.
these fits of rage. And then all of a sudden it's like it never happened,
Yeah.
So does that
Yeah.
sound about what you experienced? Okay.
Yeah.
So it's very, very real. And obviously it's something that they come out of as you deal with the problem at hand, and
Yeah.
we'll kind of get into that. So we covered
And then she
a
also
bunch of the
started
questions in
having
once.
facial twitches as well after, like her eyebrows, like she was always just kind of like raising her eyebrows, and not realizing it.
Huh.
Yeah.
So it's interesting. So you guys had some like physical twitches and stuff, which which a lot of people aren't cognizant of, or that's not something you hear about often. And so that's why it's so important to kind of dive through this. And one of the big reasons why I asked these questions specifically is to show people who are watching these mold talks, like there's so much variability from person to person. Everyone's immune system is different. The way in which your body copes with certain mechanisms is different. So it's really interesting to kind of dive into this and see just what could it be, right? And
right.
Hopefully it helps people listening diagnose for themselves, like, oh yeah, I've dealt with that, and that's interesting. I've never heard that before, but now that you mention it, I'm feeling that way. So it's really cool that we get to kind of cover this in such a broad spectrum and really create awareness around this. We covered a lot of questions in one. So
I'm going to do one more thing real quick, because I feel like once the symptoms you have one or two, you're like, nah, that's not me. But when they kind of like pile on top of each other, there's another major one that I would say that everybody's kind of been affected by, is sleep. The inability to fall asleep like no other. I mean, it would take, and I would notice if my son, it would take him like 3 hours to go to sleep. I mean, we go to bed at a regular time. I put them to bed at like 8 o'clock, do a little nighttime story, you get the whole routine going down. And I mean, he just lie awake in bed for 2-3 hours if we don't give him a little help. So
wow.
Yeah,
that's very interesting, and again, the insomnia of it, it can be common, but it's not something you always hear about. So thank you for covering that. And a lot of people, they go from doctor to doctor, doctor to doctor. It sounds like you had a similar journey, kind of going from different doctors and not really getting the answers you needed. You finally find someone who's like, hey, have you checked your house? So what was that journey like? How long was it? And was it kind of like that for everybody? Because I'm imagining you're not going to the same doctor as your kids. So, kind of walk me through that.
Well, for us, I feel like once we realized, because we didn't pay attention to the others. I wouldn't say we didn't pay attention, but we checked for lactose intolerance, we checked for asthma and things like that with the regular pediatrician. But then once the tics came on and it was more obvious that this is something not normal, or I would say common, really, right. Because what's normal just because something's common doesn't mean it's normal, right? So once we did that and the pediatrician referred us to the neurologist, within 2 meetings with him, because one was the initial, go get your blood work. The second was come back, we'll go over your blood work. And as soon as he offered me the ADHD medicine for tics that may go away, may not go away, he's fine. I knew that was the end of my road in that area of medicine.
Yeah.
And immediately,
he's fine, but here's ADHD just in case.
Yeah. Meanwhile, the list of like side effects, one of them was tics. So your prescriber
seems like it
something
may make the problem worse.
Yeah. So amongst other things. So that was the end of my road, even bothering with anybody in that realm. And I knew that I needed to find a functional medicine doctor. And quite honestly, I think because I had gone to school for integrative nutrition, I was kind of already aware that there was another road that we needed to go down. Do you know what I mean? So I'm thankful that I had that in my back pocket to even be aware, because I feel like a lot of people are not even aware that that's a thing. Because every now and again, you'll still talk to somebody like, oh, well, what's functional medicine, or what's integrative medicine? Like, they're just not aware of it.
Yeah, it's
So
getting to the root cause of what's happening, and then
yep,
that's really the best way to describe it. And I'm a big advocate for functional medicine, integrative medicine, because I mean, the integrative medicine is great because it has the MD side of things. You get the best of both Western medicine and functional medicine. I kind of love that approach because obviously there's certain things that Western medicine does right, but
absolutely.
there's so many things it does wrong too. And I guess you could say that's true of any type of medicine, any type of profession, et cetera. But I'm glad that you finally found somebody that can put you on the right path and guide you to what kind of the next steps are. Another good question that I typically ask is, how did it impact your ability to just live normal everyday life? And, obviously you have three different stories here. So I'm sure it impacted you guys differently, but, just answer whatever comes to mind when you think of that.
I think, well, because I feel like I don't know, you kind of go on the back burner for yourself sometimes when there's kids
Yeah.
involved, which I know is not the best and not good, because if you're not feeling your best, and how can you give your best? I mean, I get that, but looking out, I feel like the one who has had the most adjustments and trouble for me would be my son. Just because he's had more of the health issues. I actually had him tested to see if he had the gene that makes you more susceptible to mold toxicity. And he came back with it. It's the HLA-DR gene,
Okay.
which just means that he's more sensitive. He has a harder time detoxing. And everything. So like his fatigue gets pretty bad if he runs a lot. He has a hard time breathing. So for him, I'm like, you're a kid. I want you to run out and play, and I want you to go do all these things. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Go outside, but he's like, aren't you tired? I just want to lay here in this house. And so I would say for him, it's been a bigger, but only he doesn't know because he's still little and he doesn't really know any different. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, no, and I know
So
that it's tough to watch your kids struggle with something, and of course, it's human nature to be a mom or to be a parent and to want to just not even worry about yourself. You're worried about your kids, and you're numb to it all of what you're going through because you're so focused on your kids. So I could totally relate to that. I have two little kids myself, 2.5 and 6 actually. So. All right, so it was your son that kind of had more of the issue. Anything that comes to mind for you or your daughter?
not so much for her, because her was more temperament. And then her eyes bothering her just from the involuntary movement of like the eyebrows and the
Okay.
scrunching kind of deal. I mean, they both have trouble falling asleep, but we have some supplements to kind of help them out with that, because I still got to get for school,
Yeah, of course.
and so we got to make sure they're still getting adequate sleep, because that's when their brain is detoxing, and their lymphatic system and everything. So and then for myself, I mean, I just try and take to rest when I can, because of the overwhelm of everything, just knowing that I need to take, even 5 minutes to myself and just kind of just meditate or sit or just be able to process, so that way I can deal with everything else that's going on with them.
No, it's awesome, that you're taking steps towards self-care, because obviously, like you mentioned earlier, you have to put your oxygen mask on before you help others put theirs on, right? You have to kind
Right.
of have the strength and the wisdom to help those around you. And it's easier said than done, but it's really important. And I'm sure that you would agree to that. You're a health coach, and we're going to kind of dive into that. But first, we have an interesting crossroads here, because most of the people that I interview, they're kind of through the other side of the journey. They're sharing their story. You're actually still in the journey. And so I wanted to kind of highlight that. It's my understanding you had a pretty tough road with remediation. Obviously, it was before you and I had a chance to speak today. And so if you
Right.
don't mind, sharing your experience that others can kind of see the importance of the due diligence and finding a company that really understand this from a health perspective. Anything that you can share on that?
Yeah. So we got our test that confirmed the species of mold that were present. To the degree that they came back, I was well aware that we needed, a good company, which oftentimes is not cheap, depending on what you've got going on in your house.
Sure.
So we essentially we moved out. We moved out for about a long time, like 8 or 9 months, and moved into my in-laws. And in that time, other people were hired that I did not choose.
Okay.
And I feel like
And
sometimes
that could happen with family, right? And,
yeah,
it's
everyone wants to give their opinion, right?
sure.
So what are they gonna say? So they a guy was hired, because lots of times, there's all those do it yourself, and maybe if you've got a small problem, you can do it yourself. I don't know, but I know for ours that was definitely should not have been an option. I'll say, I like to use air quotes like my kids do now. A guy.
A guy, yeah.
A guy came.
He was the guy.
Yeah, he was a guy. He was a guy that remediated. So we come back, and I'm not kidding you. Within a week of being back in the house, meanwhile, while we were out, I tried my best to get the kids to eat the stuff that they need to eat and stay away. But they're kids, and I can't control it all the time. And
Sure.
I don't want to develop some eating issues because mommy says I can't have this. And so the best that we can. Within a week of being back, my son's ticks were like on fire. They were like, because they had gone away while we were out of the house. And then they came back like full force, and even more so. And I was like, this was not done right. I just know it's not done right. So we ordered another mycotoxin test to check, and some had, some of the levels had gone down and a new one had come up, which apparently is common, because as they're deep in the tissues, the mycotoxins are deep in the tissue. So as some are leaving, more are able to come to the front. And if you're, they're checking with your urine. So if it's present in the urine, it means that it's actually detoxing. So, but they came on, his ticks were on fire. And so I just knew. And so what I did was I ordered my own ERMI test. I just went onto their website and I ordered it. I dusted the entire house, and the levels were astronomical. They were still there. So we ended up looking into hiring a new person. This new person was, I can do this and I can do that, and we'll have no problem. And then after we're done, we'll come back and we'll retest to make sure that the job is complete. And then if it's not, they even gave me stories of other occasions where it occasionally was not complete, and they went out and they resolved the problem until it was done right. So I said, well, this is great, because they're going to come out and test my house again for free. And they're going to get it done and right until it's right. And this is what I need, because the first guy didn't do anything. So they came to the house and remediated. And then they never came out. They never came back to check. And I could never get back in touch with them. Because the day after they came, I had sent an email asking certain questions of concern that I had. And he said, oh, we can address this when I come back out to retest. But then they never did come back out to retest. So I ordered a Hertz Me test after that, because the Hertz Me shows that it's only 5 species versus 36 species. But the ones that were the highest on the ERMI test were representing on the Hertz Me. So I'll just order that. It's cheaper. But if those levels are still high, I know that those were the ones that were really high on my ERMI test. So I got that test back, and they still were beyond the level that anybody should be living. And so that's where we're at, because that's just where we're at right now. That's where we're at.
So if it's okay with you, I'd love to unpack all of this right here. You happen to be with me. We can kind of dive into this. This is really my specialty and my forte, is kind of looking at this, putting the pieces of the puzzle together to create a healthy home. And one of the things that I've realized is there's actually 50,000 companies that consider themselves mold remediation companies. And so what I've decided is I'm no longer a mold remediation guy. I'm a healthy home guy. And there's a reason for that, because what people traditionally mistake remediation for are not actually the way it's supposed to be done. With horror stories, no containment, demo, spreading stuff everywhere. Mold remediation has become this theory of you just like open up some drywall, spray some chemicals, or you fog, or do whatever the heck these guys are doing these days. And as you can see, I just knowing how this all works, I can tell you what happened to your place. Whether they found some issues and resolved some things, that's very possible. But really the big problem here is that the reason that your scores are still off the charts is because no one's actually addressing the elephant in the room.
Right.
When mold is living inside your home, and when I say living, it's because the mold is two things: a living organism and actually the particles that living organism produces. And they're called mold spores or mycotoxins, as you know. So when mold's living inside your home, and it sounds like it's been a couple of years, it's sporulating. When it feels threatened, it's producing mycotoxins. What makes it feel threatened? Other molds make it feel threatened.
Yeah.
They're all fighting for the same real estate. On top of that, things that we do that are kind of outside of our control, like there's a lot of studies regarding Wi-Fi, how Wi-Fi made mold feel threatened, produce mycotoxins. We're in a Wi-Fi world. If 5G coming out, it's going to get worse. So when we look at all this stuff, we have to say it's more important now to kind of keep this under control and make sure that we have healthy environments. And what I think, just off the bat, your company sold you this bill of goods that they're going to do all these things and then deliver. But the reality of it was, I don't think they even knew how to deliver. Yeah. Now, a lot of companies, they have no idea how to deal with how to deal with mycotoxins. And I think that's really what it comes down to, because traditional mold remediation doesn't teach you to deal with those things. It doesn't.
Okay.
These are technologies that exist that people are not utilizing in this traditional sense. So in the future, when you're interviewing mold companies, look for a company that specializes in dealing with complex medical situations, which you're going to find there's going to be maybe less than 1% of those 50,000 companies. You're talking needle in a haystack, but it's so important that you talked with others, find that needle in the haystack, because there's a whole community of people that know that air quality is an important endeavor in terms of optimizing our health. And they know that there's people out there that are good at finding issues and fixing them. And I think that's kind of where you stand. Do you know, let's just kind of dive into now that we've kind of discussed like the importance of doing this right. Let's talk about what they did. So what did you saw physical walls missing? Like what happened? What did they actually do?
Okay, so the first, I have a piece of the story. This is interesting. For the first go round, I don't know. In the beginning, when we got the initial test that confirmed that the same mycotoxins in our bodies were the same ones that were in the house, as like, we need, a reputable company. Well, those reputable companies were costing a lot.
Sure.
And so my partner said, well, wouldn't it be fun if we just destroyed this ourselves? You know where this is going. I was like, I don't think it's I knew that it was not a good idea, but being a one income family as a stay-at-home mom, there's only so much power I could flex. So I was like, fine, whatever. Okay. And then he said, if this doesn't fix our problem, then we'll get somebody to do it. So that was mistake number one, because the initial area was, like I said, the bathroom where the vent wasn't installed properly. There was no actual, whoever built the house they just had like a hole in ceiling of the fan or whatever. They didn't actually vent it properly. So the wall was ripped out. The whole bathroom was demolished, courtesy of myself and my partner, my husband. And so then that's when the guy came in and re-drywalled everything and was supposed to remediate, but they literally just treated that room in the bedroom that was connected to the bathroom. The second people didn't demo a thing, not a thing. They, now looking back, I think they literally just fogged.
Okay.
Which I already have my own fogger. I don't need to pay you XYZ dollars to fog. I have
Right.
one.
Yeah, you need to figure out what's causing the opportunity for something like mold and bacteria to be present in the first place, fixing that. It does require investigation, opening up walls. If fogging worked, I'd be doing it too. And there's a very big reason why I don't fog, and it's just exactly that. We have to solve real problems and improve the conditions of the home. So you guys did a DIY project initially, kind of realized that this is probably too big for you guys to tackle. You brought in a guy who, and is this the person that didn't do anything, just fogged?
No, that's a second.
That's a second. So what did the guy do? What was his role?
Well, I wasn't living in the home at that time. Okay. Just based on what I saw after, I am under the impression that he literally just put up new walls and drywall and flooring and sprayed the area and was done. He didn't do anything.
He just kind of more along the lines of just like remove and replace, spray the area.
Yeah.
But okay.
So I know that the HVAC should be checked.
Yeah.
It's a huge one. The second company was the one that pretty much fogged everything. They claimed it was and I don't want to call them out, but they used some non-chemical, not harsh chemicals or whatever.
Pure acetic acid?
Maybe, I don't recall, but it was something that was supposed to be safe, which was sounded really good to me because I didn't want having Roman, being my son's name is Roman, chemical sensitivities and all that. It's like, oh, this is better. I don't want him to breathe in more toxins because some of the people that spray toxic stuff, and this would be a better option. But I think that they literally just fogged it. I don't even believe they wiped down. They didn't wipe down any walls, anything. Because when I went back in one of the rooms above the lights in one of the bathrooms, they're up high. And when I stood up on something to see, there's still dust up there. If you wiped down 2 days ago, there would be no dust over there.
The EPA does an amazing job kind of explaining this, and that's as reputable as a source that usually people like to see. When you go on the EPA's website, and they have a whole mold educational course there on their website, and it says on their website, the objective is not to kill mold. If you try to kill mold, the problem with that is that dead spores may also create health concerns for individuals. So they're saying that mold's a health concern and that even dead mold is still a health concern. And so just that one sentiment kind of refutes every mold remediation guy's tactics of mold remediation itself. And it goes back to the IICRC is a great foundation that trains people, gives them certifications. And the IICRC, it does a really good job. It just doesn't go too far into, the cleanup process. And that's what I would love to see expanded. But basically you have, it talks about your contents and non-porous and porous and what you need to do to sanitize these things. But it really needs to just flat out tell people, look, if you're going to remediate, you kill the living organism, right? You remove it from the property, and then you got to clean up the dead bodies. Essentially, that's really what's happening.
Right.
So where everybody misses the mark, and what fogging misses the mark, and all these just legitimate companies that are trying to do better, where they miss the mark is they go in, they try to kill things, and then they leave everything there, and now you're still exposed to this. And sometimes if they are haphazard about it, they actually make the problem worse. And what I mean by that is, let's say there's, just for argument's sake, 1 million spores in your environment. Well, if I start opening up walls without engineering controls and I cross contaminate, now there could be 10 million spores in the environment. Right. So that's why people say I've remediated, but I feel worse. Well, you feel worse because they may have solved some of the problem, but they made the exposure part 10 times worse. And that's the part that actually makes you feel not well, because it's what you're exposed to, you know, and having mold in your environment creates that exposure. So you have to eliminate the source of the exposure and then clean up the exposure. And that's why things fail. That's why, you know, you're in this predicament, and it's not your fault. It's not your family's fault. Really what the problem is that the way in which we look at air quality today needs to change. Absolutely. And I hope that's what we're accomplishing together by kind of talking about this. Now, before we go, because we're kind of running low on time here, what I want to do is give you a few minutes. How can we help you now? Right? You're in this situation. Is there any questions that you could ask me today that I can help you take action now on improving your situation and getting you to where you need to go, which is really being in a healthy environment so you guys can heal?
Yeah, I think ultimately for us, I know we need to get out of the house. Like that's clear. Until it can be completely remediated the proper way. That's going to happen, because I did speak with one other remediator that came out on the behalf of a friend, and he says the job that needs to happen, it would take about a month and a half, I think, to get it all done properly.
Okay. Well, you now have my email address, and so feel free to bounce ideas off of me. Let me help you through this process. Let's make sure you've already been through 2 nightmares. Let's not make it a third. I'm happy to devote some time to look things over and make sure that the right thing is going to be done, so you can finally put this behind you. And you know, I'm just going to straight to camera talk to anyone who might be in this situation, who's dealing with like the financial hardship of this. I can tell you from experience, when you're dealing with, you know, all these different bids, obviously you got to pick the right one, but usually the guy who's the cheapest is not going to solve your problem.
No.
And the reason I say that is because solving the problem is more complex. It's not there's no flipping of a switch. You got to diagnose what's going on. So that means spending money in testing is an investment to figuring out what all the problems are. And then hiring someone that's actually going to take that roadmap and make it so that at the end of the day, all those exposures are going to go away, and they're going to guarantee that. That's what you need to do. And that can be costly. But now think about all the money that has been wasted on not solving the problem that could have been used towards actually solving the problem. And these are the types of things you have to weigh out. And, you know, I'm a husband. I've talked to many husbands in my career, and there's always that difficulty, understanding what the rest of the family is going through unless they're going through it themselves, and B, the cost factor, because innately it's just a guy thing. We always have to get the best deal. We always want to talk to other people and get other opinions, because like we always want to be told when someone's like, you have to replace your roof, we always want to listen to that guy who's like, just patch it over here, you know. And what does patching it over here do? Well, it fixes over here and now it's weak over there. So now you're dealing with, you know, a month later, this leak and then that leak. And then you end up going, man, I should have just replaced the whole damn roof and listened to the first person. So this is kind of the situation that happens. And with mold, it's so freaking confusing because you got 10 different people telling you 10 different things. Just listen to one thing and one thing only. If you're not getting down to the root cause of what allowed the problem to exist in the first place, guess what? You're going to still have that problem. So invest the money into fixing the problem once and for all, and you'll be better off for it. And that's the same with remediation and probably everything else that exists on life.
Yeah.
So
I mean, I couldn't agree with you more. You end up spending a lot more by trying to take the cheaper route because it's not going to solve your problem. And it's added stress. And I mean,
added stress. you're fighting
Yep.
more, right? It's
Yep.
like, it's not a good situation. And so, I don't know all the intricacies of your situation and who you interviewed and whatnot, but I can promise you that there was at least one person that was right on the money, and I'm sure they were more expensive, and I'm sure it was, difficult to decide that decision, and you went with other options, but that person probably was right in some capacity in things that were happening. And I think that you have to kind of look at that, like, we got to solve the root cause of the problem. If it sounds too good to be true, it's too good to be true. I talked to someone earlier who was like, I had a company that was coming out to fix my basement. They quoted me 15,000. I went with the guy who quoted me 2,000. I'm like, where are you now? Well, I've spent more than 15,000. Well, of course you did. Because the guy who said 2,000 got his foot in the door, and then he's like, well, this problem's a lot bigger. He didn't solve the problem. There's dust and mold everywhere, right? So we're back at square one. We didn't actually accomplish what we set out to accomplish, and now it's cost us more. So you gotta look at that and kind of really decide what is the right move for you. And I think that you've definitely highlighted that with the stories you shared today, and hopefully I was able to provide some very good insight on that to help you kind of on your next stage. And by the way, my offer stands. You have my email. Keep me in the loop. I'm very curious. I want to help you guys. I want to make sure that you get through the other side. Happy to provide a very unbiased opinion on what you should do and how you should do it. And see you guys through to the other side.
Thank you.
You're very welcome. And so just to kind of tie things back up, this was an amazing Mold Talks. Thank you so much again. Given the fact that we've covered so much here today, one last thing, and we probably have touched on this, I'm sure, but what would you recommend to others who are going through similar challenges you're going through? How can you help others avoid the same mistakes?
Okay, I think the number one thing that you need to do when you're not feeling well and you know that something is just not right, whether it's you or a family member, to never stop asking questions. You always got to keep on asking questions until you get to the why. But why? But why? Okay, well, when did this happen? Or is it only a certain time of day? Or is it in certain areas of the house? Or is it when I'm at work or my car? Like, to always just ask questions so you can get to the root of your health issue. That's a big one, because I know that if we didn't continue to ask questions, we'd be giving my son ADHD medicine, and all of us would be living in mold unknowingly. Yeah. You know what I mean? And then everybody be getting worse. So that's a big thing, rather than just chalking up, mom brain to I'm a busy mom, or, start asking questions. I think that's a big thing.
Thank you for that. It's great advice. Never stop asking questions. Get down to the root cause of what's going on, because that's when you can really make change. I wanted to thank you so much for being here today, and just for people that want to connect with you, that maybe just are going through similar things and want to connect with you, or maybe they're interested in what you're doing today. Obviously, you've taken this tragedy that you're still going through. You've decided it's not going to stop you. As a matter of fact, it's empowered you to turn around and help others. You have this health coaching business. Quickly tell me about that, and where can people find you?
Okay, well, my main, I guess, passion is to help people to detox from, mold, clearly, but also just environmental toxins in general, because heavy metals, we're exposed to them all the time. Pesticides. I really have a passion for the whole umbrella of environmental toxins.
Awesome.
And so I'm actually working on launching a podcast myself.
Fantastic.
In January. I just started a new Instagram page for that and gearing up, which is called Toxic Talk, but it's spelled TOXSICK, like toxic talk. And then like I said, I help people with getting on a better diet. So they're eliminating pesticides and then taking some action on detoxing, like a gentle daily detox. So that way they can eliminate what they've accumulated up to this point and start improving upon their health. So.
Awesome. So where do they connect with you? What's your website?
Be Well and Green.
bewellandgreen.com.
Correct. Yes.
Awesome. bewellandgreen.com. And then, so you gave us the Instagram for your new podcast coming up. Do you have your own Instagram for people to connect where you kind of share information?
I'm doing it all over there right now.
Okay. Cool.
Everything over on Toxic Talk. And then I've got the link in there for my regular website as well. So
awesome.
Be Well and Green is where you improve upon your health, and Toxic Talk is where you learn about where all the environmental toxins are affecting you.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for all that you're doing now to kind of amplify this, and really appreciate that. Looking forward to continuing to help you. And then when you launch your podcast, we'd love to get on there and help share, some toxic information regarding how your home can play into that.
Absolutely.
On top of all the products and all the things that we experience outside, but we'd love to kind of dive into that to help educate the people that you're already going to be educating through all the amazing information you're going to be putting out there. Yeah, Shannon, thank you so much for being here today. This was such an amazing conversation. I know that people are going to get a lot out of this. So thank you. And any last parting words before we go?
No, I just wanted to thank you for having me as well. I think that, just bringing awareness to especially our homes. And I think also because we had touched on with, COVID and everything, people being at home more, it's always important for your home to have good air quality, but as much time as we spend inside, just in our modern day lives anyway, it's like crazy important to make sure that your house is not hurting you. So.
Totally agree. Thank you for the kind words, and thank you for that. I think the statistic was something like 80% of our time is now spent inside of our homes with COVID insane. And everything. It's a lot. Insane. So yeah, thank you for helping me raise awareness, and I'm excited for this to come out.
Thank you so much for having me.
All right, talk to you soon.
Okay.